Plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Well, hello there and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde, and we're going to be talking about the hard work ahead for 2024. I guess this is appropriate since the legislative session will be kicking off on Monday. And this, of course, means that we're going to see a lot of fireworks, and we're also going to see a lot of distortion in how corporate media reports on some of the various issues. So because there's so much disinformation out there, I wanted to start with the Idaho Freedom Foundation and what their goals are, what they are looking forward to in this upcoming session. And then we'll talk about how the media is going to portray this. So let's start, first of all, with the words of Wayne Hoffman, president of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, who back on December 29th published a piece titled "In 2024, Let's Do Hard Things." Wayne says, many years ago, a friend of mine had bumper stickers printed up that read, "Do hard things." Now, the point of the sticker's message is most everything worth doing is hard. He says, I like the message so much, it's the one and only bumper sticker I ever put on my car. Doing hard things is the story of my ancestors who immigrated to America in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Now, listen to this part. They didn't come here to have government take care of them. They did not come here seeking out Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Such programs didn't exist. Similarly, the men and women who journeyed west by foot, wagon train, and locomotive, who built log cabin shacks with their own two hands, did hard things, and it would have been easier and safer to stay where they were. He's got a point. It's the very essence of the Idaho Freedom Foundation, which figuratively pushes a boulder uphill every day. We argue for less government in the face of politicians and bureaucrats who are owned by special interests and want something very different. We do hard things. It would be easier to join the throngs of people who want more government, only advocating for reforming programs in certain ways in order to avoid dealing with the systemic problems created by government. It would be easier to argue for ways to surrender liberty in the interests of public safety or comfort. But Wayne says we choose none of those options. Freedom is hard, but it's also what made America great. He says doing hard things often yields better results. Given the choice between, say, giving a poor person money and helping that person land a job, the former is often far and away easier, but the latter, though more difficult, reaps better and longer-term rewards. He says it's easier to drop your kids off at a government-run school based on a zip code than it is to teach that child at home or shop for the education that best suits their needs. It's easier to expand the government medical welfare system than it is to take the time to pay attention to an individual's specific concerns, put your own money toward that cause, and help that person get the help that they actually need. Doing hard things in this case means insisting our lawmakers cast the difficult votes necessary to save this country from its own demise. Get the government out of the medical welfare, poverty, and suicide prevention businesses so that individuals, charities, churches, families, and communities can, as they once did long ago, not so long ago, and care for the neediest among us. Doing hard things, he says, means getting government out of the education business and expanding education choice so that parents get their money back and with that money be able to buy the education that best suits their children's individual circumstances. I'm not sure if you heard that, but off in the distance, I think I heard a few heads exploding at the prospect of separating school and state. Wayne Hoffman says doing hard things means trusting parents to know when their kids are ready to work. Freeing young people to start jobs lets them learn valuable skills, appreciate the value of money, and start saving for their futures. It also means trusting students to decide for themselves what their future should look like instead of dictating to them at a young age that they need to plan for college and career. Wayne says in 2024, let's resolve to do hard things. Future generations will thank us for it. To me, that's a pretty reasonable approach. And it's in keeping with the proper role of government, which really is why we elect people to act on our behalf in the first place. They're there to protect our God-given rights. They're there to make sure that justice prevails. They're not there to offer us all the goodies and favors and everything our heart desires just because it can be done with somebody else's money. Now, let's take a look at how the Idaho Statesman prioritizes what needs to be addressed for this upcoming legislative session. This was their editorial. Instead of culture war nonsense, here's what Idaho legislators should focus on. So right off the bat, they're telling us that anything that has to do with some of the things being foisted on our children in the name of diversity, equity, inclusivity, critical race theory, or just plain old perversion. Why, that's not even real. Check it out. Idaho legislators return to Boise on Monday to begin the next legislative session. Usually, there is little doubt that some far right, there's some judgment for you, legislators will push hot button culture war bills that seek to address imaginary problems. Gee, don't believe your lying eyes. You believe us as we gaslight you. Given that this is an election year, they say it's almost a certainty. Chipping away at transgender rights or a citizen's ability to vote, check out a library book, go to the bathroom at school, or perform in a drag show are likely to be up for debate. Who knows what other made-up crises some lawmakers will come up with. So what should they focus on instead? What are the real problems facing this state and everyday Idahoans that this elected body should address? Well, first, let's take a moment and just look at chipping away at transgenders' rights. How? By not allowing transgenders to dictate what other people can comfortably do. In other words, boys, biologically born boys, participating in girls' sports, imposing themselves into locker rooms and restrooms. Yeah, by telling them no, that's not acceptable. That's chipping away at transgender rights. Or is it telling them, no, you're not allowed to infringe on everybody else's rights? How about check out a library book? Okay, what kind of library book? Do tell. Is it the one that teaches them, how to perform various sexual acts on each other and to explore every depth of perversion they possibly can? Because maybe it's not just as simple as checking out a library book. Maybe it's something that's inappropriate for kids to see in the first place. Go to the bathroom at school. Let's harken back to, again, do you really want biologically born boys in your daughter's restroom with her or in the locker room with her? Or perform in a drag show, which I'm sure everyone has aspired to do at one point or another. Not. It's always... Every one of these has to do with children, with the exception of the citizen's ability to vote. In that case, it's a matter of confirming that it's actually someone who has the proper credentials to vote. In other words, they're actually a citizen or a taxpayer, and they're eligible to vote. Otherwise, it's just a matter of, well, let's throw as many bodies as we can, a mass wave attack like the Chinese did in Korea, to try to sway, the shift in public power. These are made-up crises in the minds of the editorial board at the Idaho Statesman. But listen to what they want to focus on. We'll just touch on these briefly. Abortion, of course. Is there anything more important than abortion? Idaho's extreme ban criminalizes necessary medical procedures, but it doesn't. If the mother's life is seriously in danger, like if she's in danger of dying, it can be done. They want to basically water it down to where, look, for any reason whatsoever, if she wants to get rid of that unplanned pregnancy or unwanted pregnancy, she should be able to do so with no consideration for the innocent life that's at stake. So, of course, abortion top on their list. School buildings. This is the latest bit of leverage. Oh, look at the school buildings falling apart here in the state. Now, there are school buildings that, are definitely in need of some repair. But you know how many school districts actually have a pretty fair amount of money to work with? In fact, many of them have surpluses. Why isn't that being used in different ways to care for this kind of thing? And support public education, because in the minds of the Idaho Statesman editorial board, there can be nothing but government education. And notice I'm using the word government instead of public. It's an accurate term. Just say no to school vouchers. Okay, what about education savings accounts? Or is everything they don't like a voucher? Don't spend our taxpayer dollars on private schools. How about letting parents decide where those taxpayer dollars go to best follow their child's education? That's not what the Statesmen and their ilk want. They want that money to support a system, a mandatory, compulsory system at that. It is the essence of statism. If it's not under the state's control, it's by definition out of control. They also call for support of higher education. I wonder why that is. Idaho's universities are the lifeblood of economic development. You know what else they're the lifeblood of? Woke indoctrination. And so they're saying Idaho should be increasing state support and supporting university presidents in their efforts to run the universities the best ways they see fit. What if that way includes trying to turn everybody into a communist of one shade or another? It's a competitive environment in higher education that will become much more competitive in the coming years. We don't need extremist legislators meddling and micromanaging decisions. If the taxpayers' dollars are involved, though, they'd have a duty to make sure that those dollars are being spent wisely. And if someone wants to take that money and then turn it into, well, we want to create, young Octobrists or the young, what is it, the red scarf kids, the young red guard to go out there and promote Maoism or communism, well, you should still be using taxpayer dollars for it. No, you shouldn't. And there needs to be accountability for that. Education and indoctrination are very desperately confused in many of the areas of higher education. I'll have to save this for a future show, but there's a wonderful graphic that I've been following that shows what has happened between 1980 and 2020 in terms of the political inclination of various professional classes. It includes people in medicine, engineers, lawyers, teachers, and so forth. And it was very balanced actually, and maybe leaning a little bit towards conservative back in 1980. But over the years, and particularly in the past few years, it's become a very far left dominated kind of a field. Why do you suppose that is? I think it's because every one of those individuals, in order to get their professional accreditation and their degrees, has to pass through the halls of an approved higher education source, which just happens to be pushing them more and more leftward. Huh, what a surprise. Almost like there was, a plan or it was deliberate somehow. Here's another priority for the Statesman: childcare. Amidst a historic labor shortage, Idaho employers have to fight for workers. Unfortunately, Idaho, like many other states, has a childcare shortage that some call a crisis. Some, yes. Cronies of those in power special interests that would like to receive taxpayer dollars, for instance. One easy step legislators can take through policies to provide a tax incentive to build new child care centers. Beyond that, legislators can provide child care tax credits and expand the child tax credit. Idaho's child tax credit is only $205, not enough to pay for a week. Now, again, is it a proper function of government to provide child care or to provide the funding for child care? No, my understanding of government is no, that's not. Property taxes, yes, they're looking for a solution to bring back the index so that property taxes are more fairly distributed among different types of property. That's probably not a bad idea, but the state needs to wean its appetite for, or its insatiable appetite for more and more money away from the taxpayers. There's never going to be a point where most of the people in these state positions or running these state agencies is going to say, please, we have more than enough money to run our agency. They always want more. And this one, I kind of agree with this last one: build a state mental health facility. Idaho is set to become the last state in the country that houses people who are determined to be dangerously mentally ill in state prison, even though they haven't been charged with any crime. Legislators should approve $25 million to build a state mental health facility for these patients and get them out of prison. Okay, I would agree. Prison is for people who really need to be kept away from society. But historically, asylums, which is what we're talking about, were used to keep inconvenient people away from society. In other words, made up crimes, well, this person makes the king uncomfortable, therefore we need to lock them up. So there may be some value to it. There may also be, again, you have to ask yourself, is it a proper function for government? Could it be handled by the private sector? And by the way, if we're talking about mental health issues, maybe we could get some mental health, help for these kids, like this trans kid who apparently shot up a school in Iowa the other day. Just saying. Now, the Statesman says these are real problems that Idaho is facing, unlike the types of nonsense that far-right legislators generally focus on to dominate the start of the session. It would be nice if lawmakers concerned themselves with solving problems rather than introducing bills to gin up extremists in an effort to scare up votes in a closed Republican primary. Oh, that sticks in their craw. How can we stop people from voting in their own self-interest? In other words, in favor of normalcy rather than this brave new world that is being foisted on us. And have you noticed how all those made-up problems, as they refer to them, tend to be, for the most part, focused at children? Why is it that the left is so focused on children? I like this answer. Jealousy. Why does the left enjoy hurting children so much? It's jealousy. Children embody innocence, something the left lost and can never get back. So they spend every day dreaming up ways to corrupt, destroy, and devour those who possess it. I like the way Joseph Sobran put it: if we can't be innocent, then neither can you. That's the message that seems to come through loud and clear from these activists. And it comes in ways like, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity. Here's Kamala Harris defining equity. It means everyone ends up in the same place. Equity is identity-based Marxism, is what it is. And with everybody ending up in the same place, I love how Z Van Fleet puts it. Now, she actually grew up in communist China, so she knows a little bit about what Marxism looks like in application. Equity does mean that everyone ends up in the same place, but what Kamala didn't tell us is that place is hell. And here's one other take on DEI. It doesn't just assume that life is more complicated and that we have to make certain adjustments, in other words, discriminate against some people, white people, we're looking in your direction, in order to advance other people, separate from merit. By the way, the whole controversy over Harvard's recently stepped down president and the people defending her, this is all rooted in this DEI mindset. It assumes that a select few know just how and how much to uncomplicate it by handing opportunities to some and denying them to others based on arbitrary assumptions about grievance, marginalization, and entitlement. Worse, it assumes the right to take and wield the coercive power to do so by mandate and quota. I love this next line. It's a naked power grab by self-proclaimed mandarins. See the difference? So there are a few things that we need to be keeping in mind. Now, of course, there are alternatives out there, and there are people who are speaking up in different voices. Boy, I got to say, I'm really impressed with the number of citizen journalists that are stepping forward to provide accountability for what their elected leaders are doing, or their school boards, or so forth. But now this is getting the eye of people who really want to be in power. Check out this headline. Here's one for you. Take Back Idaho launches campaign to combat extremism and misinformation. I think they tried another name for it. It was a shut up and do what we tell you. But somehow that didn't test so well with the focus group. So yeah, now we're gonna just protect people from misinformation and fight back against what they call extremism. So here's what the press release says. Take Back Idaho Political Action Committee, which is dedicated to protecting Idaho from extremism and misinformation, are ramping up their wink, wink, nonpartisan efforts. It's their uniparty efforts to ensure a more informed electorate and, over time, a return to civil discourse in the Gem State. Again, this is code for people shutting up and doing what they're told. The organization boasts a diverse and experienced board of directors, all heavily steeped in statism, including former Attorney General and State Supreme Court Justice Jim Jones, former Secretary of State Ben Isursa, and former Speaker of the House Bruce Newcomb. Take Back Idaho's mission is to maintain the peaceful and respectful way that Idahoans have enjoyed for generations. They provide crucial information needed to make informed voting decisions, utilizing a variety of mediums backed by data and evidence, cherry-picked to favor the status quo. When they talk about maintaining the peaceful and respectful way of life, they're talking about a time when Idahoans weren't being quite so outspoken. But then again, this is a time when Idahoans weren't having biological males trying to foist their way into the girls' restroom or into girls' sports, or people wanting to perform, men in lingerie wanting to perform for children. Yes, those peaceful, respectful times. So why are people not being so peaceful and respectful in their words? Because they see the deconstruction of our entire culture taking place. And they're right to be pushing back against it. Take Back Idaho says they emphasize empowering Idahoans by providing context and data on special interest groups that use confrontational tactics to promote self-serving agendas that do not prioritize the well-being of Idaho citizens. According to whom? Give us some details here. Jim Jones, I'm sorry, Jim, you need to be called out on this. A Vietnam combat veteran, he hides behind that veteran status as a shield against criticism. States, the politics of fear and outrage has exhausted Idahoans, turning good people against one another. Take Back Idaho provides a lifeline back to civil, pragmatic, and what he calls reasonable governing in the Gem State. Again, this is shut up and do what we say. We know what's best. Bruce Newcomb stresses the importance of engagement, stating the silent majority can no longer sit back and hope things will change. If we don't engage, we will continue down the path of losing our government education system. He says public, but he means government, to the far right, as evidenced by actions in the legislature in recent sessions. What this means is they will lose that monopoly status. You don't think the public education system is really going to go away. It works for a lot of people, but for those who want choice, why should they not have that choice? Are they all far right, or are they simply parents who are concerned about what's best for their children? Jennifer Ellis, chairwoman of Take Back Idaho, adds truth, facts, context, and informed commentary will help Idahoans sort out the disinformation and misinformation. In other words, believe us and nobody else. We'll tell you what you need to think. With all of us working together, we can take the politics out of policy. Sorry, she actually wrote that. This is all about politics, so don't try to pretend somehow ours is non-political. It's very political. They're just trying to disguise it in a warm, fluffy wrapping paper and get our elected officials working for the people again. Which people? That would be their favorite special interests and cronies. Recognizing the growing influence of extremist groups and the spread of false information, Take Back Idaho aims to empower citizens with accurate information and a nonpartisan approach to critical issues. This organization has recently contracted Snake River Strategies, led by political strategist Gregory Graff, Tiny Taters on Twitter, with this crucial mission. Graff's exceptional work in exposing extremism gives Take Back Idaho a fighting chance to tackle the challenges this organization seeks to overcome in Idaho. Greg doesn't live in Idaho, and his job is to be a political hitman to conduct smear campaigns against people. So is this some of that fabled dark money that we hear coming into the state to influence our politics for nefarious reasons? Sorry, but inquiring minds want to know. The idea, too, that we have to tell you what's okay to think and what isn't. Anything that falls outside of our narrative is going to be considered misinformation or disinformation. It shows the incredible distrust for anybody who is outside of the vetted journalist system. And this is a tweet I saw that I think really describes that mindset. This can't work. Speaking of citizen journalism, you are asking people who don't work in the news to discern what they can trust without reference to any standard but their own preference. Really? Is it really that narrow? Or do they maybe have some other resources and options to choose from? This individual says, I'd posit that it is that is the problem, whether one through luck or discernment stumbles on accuracy or not. Also, this provides for no shared set of facts. There's collectivism coming through, something woefully lacking in our society, which citizen journalism, scare quotes, cannot ever provide. I like citizen journalism, much in the same that I have friends who are Black. Sure you do. But it's not a replacement for a functioning, honest, and professional news media. And if only we had a professional, honest, and functioning news media. But we don't. So thank heavens for those citizens who have stepped up and are actually doing their part to fill in the blanks. And this is the crazy thing. Those citizens who do this and those who engage in that grassroots type journalism, they're not insisting that theirs is the only way. You should not consider any point of view but theirs. So why do those in the collectivist kind of journalism, why do they insist that only their point of view can count? Something kind of fishy about that. Okay, one final thought. Are you looking to do something a little bit different this year? If you want to change your family tree in 2024, exit the public school system. For some people, that won't be an option, but for others, that might be a good way to extricate yourself from systems that really want to rule your life or your kids' lives. Be an active part of a solid church. Read the Bible daily as a family. Teach logic and worldview to your children. You can do this. This is not, the purview of someone who has just the right credentials. Grow your home library. This is one of the ways that you do it. Read more books and let your kids see you read those books. You'd be amazed what the power of example will do. And last but not least, model a family culture, not a career culture. This is part of the hard work ahead, and it's something that to every one of us, we outsource some decisions to our legislators, but there are some things that we cannot just hand over to them. We have to tackle them ourselves. I trust that you know best what's best for yourself and for your family, so it's time to step up and start acting like it. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
Are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not